You guys, back once again. Thought I'd just jump on here and do a movie review like I said I was going to on Friday night. Before we get started, let me just do a quick thing about our affiliate for this video, which is going to be Skillshare. Most people know what Skillshare is. It's a subscription service with a bunch of online classes, usually things having to do with creativity. So it's anything to do with graphic design, video editing, painting, figure drawing, anything like that. Productivity is like classes like that, and they have all kind of classes for every single level that you may be at, from beginner to expert, and there's just thousands of them, and you can pick whatever you want on there. And if you click the link that's down in the description box, you will get a free 30-day, month-long, you know what I mean, 30-day trial of Skillshare, where you can take all of the classes that you want to. It's a pretty great deal. So yeah, full disclosure, obviously, if you click on that link and subscribe to Skillshare, I get a small commission. But yeah, it's a great deal. You'll be able to access all of the classes for free for 30 days. So check it out by clicking on the link in the description box. So now let's get into this movie. Now, I'm, a 70s and 80s girl, obviously. And so I'm pretty much always game to check out like an 80s horror movie that I somehow missed the first time around. So when one of you guys, I can't remember exactly who it was, but I think it was in one of the YouTube comments, one of y'all recommended the 1981 movie Fear No Evil. And I looked for it, and I noticed that it happened to be on Shudder. So I decided I was going to go over there and give it a look. Now, I seem to remember seeing the cover of this. Hi, Kenny. How are you doing? Back like in the video store back in the day. But for whatever reason, I don't think I ever rented it. Like when I watched it, nothing about it was familiar. Sometimes it happens that I'm like, oh, I never saw this movie back in the 80s. But then when I watch it, I'm just like, oh, yeah, maybe I did see it. This one did not seem familiar to me at all, because I'm pretty sure I would have remembered. So I don't know why I didn't rent it back in the 80s, because I rented pretty much everything else. Maybe it just didn't stand out all that much, or whatever. It just got overlooked somehow. So I had actually never really seen this one. Now, although I didn't know this until after I watched it and was like researching it, Fear No Evil was actually the directorial debut of Frank LaLoggia. He wrote this movie too. Now, he would actually go on to direct one of my favorite 80s ghost stories, and a movie that I always recommend for parents that have, kind of younger kids that are trying to like get them into horror. He directed The Lady in White from 1988, which is a great movie if you haven't seen it. I think I reviewed it last year, maybe around Halloween or the year before. I can't remember, but I have like reviewed it. I really, really like that movie. I saw it a bunch of times back in the 80s. So this is the same director. Now, I will say though, that had I not found that out, I wouldn't have ever figured that out on my own, because Fear No Evil is like entirely different. And I'm going to say it's like a lot cheesier than The Lady in White was. But, I mean, Fear No Evil does have a few good things going for it. The best thing of which is the soundtrack. The soundtrack for this movie totally slaps. I was really, really into it. It has songs by the Sex Pistols. It has Boomtown Rats, Talking Heads, the Ramones, B-52s, the Rosillos, Patti Smith, and Richard Hell, like all in one soundtrack. I was just like, these songs would play in the background. I'm like, holy shit, like another really good one. It was amazing. So yeah, so I loved that about it. That was probably my favorite thing about it. Now, the story does take some cues from The Omen and from Carrie for sure, because it's kind of a religious horror, but like kind of filtered through like a high school kind of lens. There's kind of two things going on at one time, which I'll get into in a little bit. And I'm gonna say it even has like a slight Grease influence, which might sound kind of bizarre, but I'll kind of get into that too. But yeah, so like I said, it leans pretty hard into the religious horror angle. So much so, like it's very Catholic. So it almost gave me a slight like Alice, Sweet Alice vibe at times too, because of all the Catholic imagery and stuff. But yeah, so this is a religious horror movie, but also has like a bunch of post-punk and like high school stuff going on, which so it's kind of weird. Like tonally, it's kind of weird. And I'm gonna say overall, I didn't love it. The pacing was kind of uneven. Some of the parts of the movie were real slow, and some of the acting was a little bit cringe, and kind of overwrought, I thought. And I'm not sure if there wasn't some maybe unintentional homophobia going on in there. I'm not entirely sure like what the intent was, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Now, I mean, the movie overall, it does have some really weird, like, kind of what the fuck moments that are definitely entertaining because you're just like, oh, okay, so we're doing that now. But I'm not sure if there were, like, enough of them to make up for these kind of, like, long stretches of the movie where it was just kind of slow and sort of boring, you know what I mean? So the movie starts out, it's sometime in the past. I'm not entirely sure, like, what year it's supposed to be. But we have, like, a Roman Catholic priest. His name is Father Damian, and he is supposedly the temporary human form of the Archangel Raphael, right? So there's this kind of battle between good and evil, which takes place at this kind of castle-looking place. It's a real building that they shot it at in upstate New York. Like, it's on this island, and it kind of looks like a castle. I don't know who built it. I don't know what the story is behind it, but yeah. I've seen it in other movies, though. Now, the inside of the castle, like, it's decorated with, like, lots of sacrificed animals hanging everywhere, and then there's, like, a dead lady in there, too. Like, now, I'm gonna say, too, that there's a lot of dead animals in this, and they all look like real dead animals, so, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, dead dogs and whatnot, so if that's gonna bother, because it kind of bothered me, not gonna lie. I know that there's places where you can go to get fresh dead animals for movies and stuff, which is kind of messed up, and I'm sure that's where they got them. I'm not saying they killed the animals for the movie or nothing like that, but it's just kind of like, I don't know, it just kind of, I was kind of like uncomfortable about it. So yeah, so this whole good versus evil battle takes place. Now Father Damon ends up killing a man who claims to be Lucifer. He's got they do like some demon makeup on him, like with these big teeth and like these contact lenses. But the funniest thing about it is his hair, because his hair kind of reminded me of, do you remember that stuff where they, like, for a time, I don't know if they still make this or not, but where they used to like sell jars where it was peanut butter and jelly, like, in the same jar, and they were like stripes? Okay, well, his hair is kind of like that, except not peanut butter and jelly colored, obviously, but it was just kind of like, he had like these white stripes in his hair, and then like the rest of the hair was like regular colored, and I was just kind of like, well, that was a choice. Okay, so Lucifer has hair like that. You know what I mean? He's only in it for like 2 minutes or something, but I just thought the hair was like really funny. So Father Damon kills this guy who claims to be Lucifer by impaling him through the chest, like against this big tree, like with this big like staff style cross thing that he's got. Like, you know, it's like a staff but with a cross on it. You see like Catholic priests carry him and shit like that. Now, Lucifer doesn't seem all that upset about getting killed. I mean, because he basically tells Damon, I'll be reborn anyway, you know, no brimstone off my hooves or whatever. Now, we find out later on that the authorities, obviously, did not believe that this murdered man was actually Lucifer in human form, so they ended up sending Father Damon to prison, where he subsequently died. Although I will say that there are scenes of him in prison that I thought were supposed to be taking place in the present day, but I guess not, because then they say that he's dead. So I'm like, oh, well, that must have been a flashback, but they didn't make it like super clear, or I wasn't paying enough attention. I'm not really sure. But so I was like, wait, I thought he was dead. Like, why are we having a scene with him? But whatever, it doesn't matter. So the story then jumps ahead to, I think it's 1963. And we see the birth of this baby boy named Andrew to a couple named Mr. and Mrs. Williams. Now, they take the baby to be christened, and at the christening, there's all kind of, like, supernatural jiggery-pokery going on. Like, this mysterious wind, like, blows through the church and, like, snatches stuff out of the priest's hand and all that other kind of stuff. And then there's, like, blood coming out of the religious statues and also kind of spewing out from underneath the baby's sleeves, which, okay, I mean, seems like a big red flag. But, yeah, there you go. Everyone's like, holy shit, and, like, runs out of the fucking church or whatever. So then we jump ahead another 18 years. Now, I kind of like the way they did the transition here. Instead of just going, well, I mean, I think it does say 18 years later. But what they did was we only see, like, the outside of the Williams' house. And then like it begins to slowly deteriorate, with the implication being that it's like they have all of these problems and they can't keep their shit together, like they can't keep their house together and like shit's going wrong, you know what I mean? And we just hear voiceovers of Mr. and Mrs. Williams like having a series of arguments about their son Andrew, and like maybe there's something wrong with him, and like he's probably driving a wedge between them and like taking away any love that they felt for each other and blah de blah. So I liked that transition. I thought that was really like effectively done, like because it said a lot without, you know, with just showing a little bit, like implied a lot, you know what I mean, which I thought was really good, like really efficient. Hi there, Leslie. Hello, Jenny. Cool movie. Yeah, it's, you know, I didn't love it, but it was pretty good. It was pretty good. Okay, so it turns out this is Andrew's 18th birthday. So mom has made him a cake, and then she puts it on the table, and dad goes upstairs to get the kid. But I mean, he's not a kid, he's 18, but you know what I mean. But we only see Andrew's shadow for a little while, and then when dad goes downstairs, like the creepy 18-year-old is already sitting at the kitchen table, even though nobody saw him come into the room, you know what I mean? So there's like implying that he's obviously like supernatural, you know? Now, Andrew, incidentally, is played by Stefan, I guess it's Stefan Arngrim. I actually recognized him from a couple of other movies. Class of 1984, he was in that. And Strange Days from 1995, he was in that as well. I think it was a pretty small part, but I remembered him from that. But fans of classic TV will also know that he is the older brother, I believe, of Allison Arngrim, who obviously played Nellie Olson on Little House on the Prairie. Now, when I was doing research for this movie, I also found out, alarmingly, that Allison Arngrim later claimed that her brother, Stefan, had molested her all throughout her childhood. And it's also been rumored, too, that Stefan himself was molested as a child, like by, I think, because they were both child stars, I think. So, like, they had, like, a press agent and, like, a photographer. So I think it was, like, two different people that molested him, like, allegedly. So, yeah, so that's not great. But I will say that whatever the case, like, whether any of that is true or not, the creepiness that he puts across in this, like, the fact that he's, like, so creepy, actually makes him really effective in this movie. And I will say that other than the soundtrack, which was my favorite thing, but I think his performance, well, I don't want to go that far because like there were some parts where I was just kind of like, okay, like he made like some bizarre choices, but the fact that he's like so creepy and awkward and kind of off-putting, like kind of made him like really effective in this role is what I would say, because he's essentially playing Lucifer, obviously. Now, while they're having this birthday party, the 18th birthday party, Dad kind of fumbles like an idiot and drops the cake on the floor when he's trying to light the candles. Now, Mom, which is probably an overreaction, but she starts like smacking him because he's clumsy and he messed the cake up. And then Dad, you know, big escalation, kind of like hauls off and knocks Mom like onto the floor. And then it turns out that there's like an iron that was on a table and it falls off and like beans her in the head and like knocks her out cold. Now at first I thought she was dead, but it turns out she survived. But I guess she had like really severe brain damage because when they show her next, she's like, she can't really talk and she can't really move and stuff like that. Hey everybody, what's going on? Yeah, Danny Rollington. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was like. I didn't even realize that the connection between until I looked up the guy that was in this movie, and I was just like, oh, he's Nellie Olson's older brother, and also, allegedly, she said that he molested her. So I'm like, oh, well, that's not great. Yeah. So because Andrew, this 18-year-old, is so creepy, he's unsurprisingly bullied a lot at high school. Now, he's like one of those, he's super intelligent, obviously, because he's Lucifer. So he gets straight A's, and I thought this was kind of funny. Like later on, he gets accepted to Harvard, Yale, and Columbia, and he gets like full scholarships and everything. So I was just kind of like, man, they're really piling it on. Yeah, but he's Lucifer, like I said, he knows everything. So yeah. Now, one of his main tormentors, I guess, sort of, is this dude named Tony. Now, Tony reminded me a lot of a cross between Billy Nolan from Carrie, either the book or, you know, John Travolta played him in the movie. And Buddy Repperton from Christine, if you guys remember that, because it's like, it's the same kind of thing. He has like those, it's, you know, it's 1980, 1981. So they had those terrible, like tight, like whitish jeans. And, he had like that black, like feathered hair, you know what I mean? And fucking shit like that. And he's, you know, he smokes weed. He's like talks back to all the teachers. He clearly looks like he's about like 29 years old, but you know what I mean? Maybe he was held back a few times. I don't know. Oh, and also he smacks around his girlfriend, Marie, which again, not great. Marie, as it so happens, has this satin jacket. It's like purple and gold or something like that. And it says Queen Bee, like embroidered on the back. And then all her friends have matching jackets that just say the bees on them. So I'm guessing this is kind of like the dollar store pink ladies. That's where kind of like the Grease similarities like came in, because you could tell that they were trying to make them like the pink ladies. Although they don't really do a lot with that. You know what I mean? But it's the same kind of thing that they're trying to get across, I guess. So anyway, not too long after this, like the whole high school thing is established, there's a really weird scene after gym class where like all the students, all the male students, like they're all naked and they all go in the shower, like the communal shower or whatever, like they used to have in gym class. I don't know if they have that anymore. It's been a long time since I've been in high school, and this was even longer ago than I was at high school. Now, while they're all in the shower, like Tony starts harassing Andrew, like asking him for a date, right? And then he goes over and Andrew's just like ignoring him, like what the fuck ever, you know what I mean? But then he goes over and like kisses Andrew, like pretty passionately, I will say, like kind of like pushing him into the corner, like full on like fucking sexual assault, right? But then like while that's going on, it's almost kind of like Andrew, I don't know, it's really weird, like the way that, like I said, I'm not really sure what the intention was here. Like Tony starts to freak out because Andrew is supposedly doing something to him, like while they're kissing, but I'm not entirely clear what that is, because I thought something was going to happen, like, because it looked like he was kind of like going to bite his tongue off or something. I'm like, holy shit, is he going to bite his tongue off? But that doesn't happen. But that's what I thought was going to happen, you know what I mean? Or like, I don't know, lasers were going to shoot out his mouth or something like that. I thought something was going to happen, but nothing does. But then Tony is just like, oh, he did something, but he wouldn't like say what it was. I was like, maybe they needed a special effect there or something like that, so it was clearer like what was happening. But I don't know, it doesn't matter. Now, like Andrew, after it happens and like all the other dudes are just like, whoa, we're out of here, that was some weird fucking action or whatever. But Andrew just kind of seems kind of upset and like bewildered by the whole thing. Like he's just kind of sitting in the corner of the shower, like kind of freaking out, like what the fuck just happened, you know what I mean? It kind of becomes plain as the story goes on that even though, you know, the kid is obviously Lucifer, like reincarnated, I don't think that he's fully aware of his identity or like in control of his satanic powers. I think that like when he's upset, the shit just like takes over, and then because he seems to feel bad about it afterwards. So I guess he's still like fighting with, you know what I mean? Which I think they kind of did in the Omen sequels too, if I remember correctly, although it's been a while since I've seen them. So while all of this high school stuff is going on, there's also kind of a, I don't know if I call it a B plot, because I guess it's like, they're like two plots that eventually converge, right? So there's this older neighbor lady whose name is Margaret. Now, in reality, much like Father Damon from the beginning of the movie, she is also the, you know, the human form of an archangel. In her case, they keep calling her Michael instead of Archangel Michael, but whatever. So I'm guessing that's who she's supposed to be. I think that she's also, at least in her human form, is the sister of Father Damon, like the dead priest that died in prison. Now, I think, okay, so what is going on here is that there are supposed to be 3 archangels who've been sent to Earth to fight Lucifer's new embodiment or whatever, right? But Raphael, or at least his human body, already got killed in jail. And the 3rd archangel, who they call Gabriel, which I'm assuming is Gabriel, has apparently like yet to manifest in human form, right? So this wasn't all that clear from the movie, I have to say, but it turns out that much like Andrew is maybe Lucifer but doesn't know it yet, I guess that you can also be housing an archangel and not know until the time comes to kind of like battle evil or whatever. But Margaret knows who she is, though. But she's kind of getting discouraged because the third archangel, Gabrielle, hasn't contacted her yet. And she's like, I know that it's getting, time to like kick some Luciferian ass or whatever. And it's like, where is the other archangel? Like, they should have been here by now. You know what I mean? So it's that kind of situation. Now, meanwhile, back in the high school portion of the movie, Andrew has a crush on, they don't go way in this direction, but she kind of has a crush on this classmate named Julie. But she's already engaged to another dude named Mark. Now, one day during gym class, again, I don't know if like the writer of the movie had like a bunch of bad shit happen to him in gym class. I mean, I guess we all did, but yeah. So they're in gym, and Andrew, like, he kind of showed up late. So while the gym teacher is like the kind of stereotypical hard ass, like, get down and give me 20, you know what I mean? He's that kind of dude. So he shows up a little bit late. So while the other dudes are doing whatever, he makes Andrew kind of like do push-ups or sit-ups or whatever. So all the other dudes are playing dodgeball, which I thought was like super funny. So they divide like into two teams and they're just chucking balls at each other. And I guess Andrew sort of like loses it while the other guys are playing dodgeball and he's over there doing push-ups. And he supernaturally like causes one of the balls to slam into Mark so hard that it kind of like throws him up against the bleachers, which are all kind of like folded up against the wall. And it kind of like looks like it ruptures all his organs, I guess, is what happens. It kind of reminded me of Deadly Friend, that Wes Craven movie, where the robot girl like throws the basketball at that woman's head and the head explodes. It's not quite that splashy or memorable, but it was kind of similar kind of thing going on. So again, so he kills Mark, but again, this seems unintentional because he seems really distraught about it afterward. Like, he didn't mean to do it, but he just got so mad that, the ball just flew out, because he didn't throw the ball. I think the coach actually threw it, but he threw it really hard. Now, I will note that he's distraught, but not so distraught that he doesn't kind of paranormally turn up in Julie's bed to kind of like molest her a little bit, and also kind of like leaves the 3 demonic scratches like on her shoulder, you know what I mean? And he kind of like floats outside her window a little bit like the Glick kid in Salem's Lot. So I'm not really sure if that's what they were homaging, but it kind of reminded me of that. So like I said, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that reminds me of other movies, so okay, so it turns out that after Mark gets all his organs ruptured with the dodgeball, Julie, who obviously this was her fiance, so she's inconsolable. Now she starts having dreams about Father Damon. She doesn't know who the fuck this is because she never met him. But he ends up leading her, like his ghost or whatever, like leads her to Margaret's house. And at this point, we find out that Julie is actually the person that's hosting the Archangel, Gabrielle, but she didn't know it until now, right? So her and Margaret kind of get together. They figure out what's going on. So they're going to, battle Lucifer together, like when the time comes, Now, for whatever reason, a bunch of the students, I think it was, are doing like a whole play of like the Last Supper and the crucifixion and all of that. I don't know if this was supposed to be around Easter time or they were just doing this for shits and giggles, or I don't know. It just seemed really weird. But they're doing it like on this big outdoor stage, and it seems like most of the townspeople like come out to watch it because I guess there's not a lot going on in this town. Hey, let's go see that. You know what I mean? So while that's going on, in like a bar nearby, Andrew's dad comes in, and he's already like pretty drunk, you can tell, even though it's still daytime. And he's ranting about his son being the devil. And there's kind of a funny moment where like the guy next to him is like, oh yeah, my son, he's the devil too, and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? But it's obviously not the same thing. But like nobody believes him. He starts getting like super rowdy. So the bouncer like kicks him out. And then he goes home and shoots his wife in the head, like, and kills her. So that's nice. Because remember I said like the iron fell on her head, but she lived, you know what I mean? She was just handicapped, like, because she was like brain damaged. She couldn't like really move anymore. So he just goes home and shoots her. So I'm like, oh, that's nice. I don't know what happened to him after that. I don't remember. I don't think they show him again, now that I'm thinking about it. Now, at the same time that all of that is going on, there's also a school dance, I think. And then at the school dance, though, like, Tony gets drunk and punches a guy in the bathroom for, like, pissing on his shoe because it was dark in there. I don't know. It was a whole thing. And then, so Tony and his little band of miscreants and Pink Lady knockoffs, they decide they're going to go have their own party elsewhere because this one's like really lame, right? Now, they go to this dock or whatever and straight up steal this dude's boat, and they go out to the castle place that's out on the island, like from the beginning of the movie, where Father Damon like killed Lucifer from the beginning. Now, Andrew / Lucifer is already out there. He's been hanging out there a lot. Like, he's kind of drawn out there, and he sees like various lights and things like that I guess other people don't see or whatever. He's out there sacrificing dogs, and he's wearing... This is where, remember what I said earlier, how I thought, like, I'm not really sure what the intent behind this was. Like, maybe it was slightly homophobic, but maybe not intentionally. So, Andrew is out there wearing, how can I describe this? He's naked, but it's also like this black robe, but it's sheer, you know what I mean? But it's not even quite like a robe, because it's just kind of like a, I don't know. I'm sure there's a name for that garment, but I'm not really sure what it is. It's just kind of like a robe-ish type situation, but it's like see-through. And he has like full makeup on, and then, you know, like lipstick, eyeliner, the whole thing. And then he has this like curly perm, you know what I mean? Like, he has this widow's peak type situation going on, which he had before, but it looks like they like put big curlers in his hair. So he had like these kind of like fat curl. It's like very strange, and it's just like seemed like a weird situation. So like I said, I'm not really sure if the director intended to make it super clear that Lucifer was gay and that was like a bad thing. I don't know. Like I said, maybe it was unintentional. I don't know. So, and the way that the actor is playing him, he's like camping it up like it was intentional. So I don't really know. I don't know how to feel about it. It was like super weird. I'm just like, what the fuck is going on here? You know what I mean? It's just very strange. Yeah. So I was like, yeah. And it gets even weirder because Andrew, like, magically wakes up a whole bunch of dead dudes that are buried on the property. I think it was mentioned earlier that these were all the workers that had died when the castle was being built. So I guess they were all just out there like, oh, all these people, like, disappeared, you know what I mean? But they all just are dead out there, so he woke them all up. Like, some of the guys look kind of, like, normal, but some of them, like, look super zombified. Like, the makeup, like, they're kind of covered with this lumpy oatmeal and gore and stuff like that. And they kind of, a lot of them have, like, the white contact lenses like you'd saw, like, in The Evil Dead, you know what I mean? So kind of similar to that. So there's another thing that reminded me of, like, another movie. Although Evil Dead, I think, came out the same year as this, you know what I mean? Thank you, Tom. Nice cans. You're so classy, Tom. He's always, like, watching me from the other room when I'm doing these streams. And it has to, like, comment on the boobs. Yeah. Well, yeah, I did, my hair looks good because I did my roots this morning. That's why. So it looks all one color instead of, like, having all the fucking, you know, having all the roots. Okay, so yeah, so all the zombies wake up or whatever. So Tony, you know, the bully guy, and his gang, they show up to the castle island. And then most of them get killed, like, off screen, sadly, by the zombies. There's not, like, a huge amount of gore in this, sadly. Now, Andrew confronts Tony and supernaturally gives him women's tits. Did I make that up? I did not. Yes, I realize that sounds completely bonkers. But, in its defense, it does actually relate back to something that Tony said to Andrew earlier in the movie about, like, he was trying to get Andrew to come and smoke pot with them. And he's like, you don't believe that rumor that smoking weed makes you grow tits, right? And I was just like, what? I was like, is that a real... Was there ever really a rumor that smoking weed would make a man grow tits? I had never heard that before, ever. I'm like, that's so fucking random. And so I guess him saying that, and then the whole thing with Tony, like, trying to kiss Andrew in the shower. So I guess he's like, oh, I guess you're like a woman now, so I'm going to give you breasts. And I was just kind of like, this is a weird fucking movie. I'm like, what the fuck is even going on? So yeah. So Tony is so appalled at having breasts that he looks right at Andrew and he screams, fuck you, at Andrew, and then he proceeds to like stab himself in the tits, killing his own stupid self, which, okay. Good job. I mean, you really showed Lucifer what's what there, didn't you? Hey, give me women's tits, I'll show you. And then he stabs himself to death in the tits. And I was like, I don't understand what's going on in this movie right now. But yeah. Tom said, yeah, we'd lowered something. Oh, okay. See, but I had just never heard that. I had never heard that before. So it's like, in this movie came out in 81. I was like, was this an 80s thing that I just missed out on because I was too young to like smoke weed in 1981? I don't know. It was just like so weird. But it's like the fact that Tony is just in there and unbuttons his shirt and he has boobs, and I was just like, this is a weird kind of movie. Yeah. So Tony stabs himself, and then Lucifer, who's just cackling and just over the top fabulous, right, in his like see-through robe or whatever. Now he carries the last remaining teenager, who I think is named Brenda. She wasn't like a super big character or anything like that. She was just one of the gang. And he puts her on an altar to sacrifice her. Now, while all of this is going on, Julie and Margaret, the two stealth archangels, they've been kind of like hustling their asses off to try to get out to the island themselves so they can defeat Lucifer. Now, I neglected to mention this earlier because there's a lot going on in this movie, like at the same time, you know what I mean? But remember I was talking about the whole Jesus play that was going on in the town square or whatever? Okay, well, that didn't end up too well. What ended up happening was that the guy playing Jesus, he's like up on the cross being crucified or whatever. Like, not really, obviously. He was just tied to it because it's a play. But he started having like stigmata for real. And then, so he starts like bleeding, and then I guess he dies from the stuff because he has like the wound in the side and everything like that. And then he gets struck by lightning. And then everybody watching the play, like, also spontaneously starts bleeding, like, from their wrists and from their, you know, forehead and everything. And then, so then they just all scattered, but then they all started dropping dead too. Like, I guess, like, presumably from blood loss, or some of them also got struck by lightning too. It was just, like, a really weird situation. So Margaret keeps talking about the second coming. So I'm not sure if that's what this is or if that's what they're trying to imply, because some people are just like wandering around going, oh my God, what's going on? You know what I mean? You know, I'm not religious, so I don't really know what the what the deal was. But I was like, well, maybe that's what that is. You know, I don't know. It's just weird. So Julie and Margaret finally get to the castle island with the big cross that Father Damon had. So, and it's glowing like the whole time with, you know, the, I'm not really sure. I know there's a word for it, but I can't remember what it is right now. But you know, like in the 80s where they would do that overlay of like the light and it was kind of glittery, you know? You know what I'm talking about if you've seen like movies from the 80s. Okay, so the cross has that. But so it's like every time they move it, it's just like, woo, it's just like light everywhere. You know what I mean? Now, I will say that even though it looks like Margaret and Julie arrive in time to stop Lucifer from stabbing Brenda, like, you know, because she's on the altar and everything, they kind of let it happen anyway, because they're like standing there like, hey, Lucifer, and he's just like, yeah, and they're just like, oh, well, we probably could have stopped that, but okay, too late now. You know what I mean? Sorry, Brenda. I was just like, all right, they were right there. So yeah, so then I'm thinking, okay, so now there's been a human sacrifice. Like, does that mean Lucifer wins? Because prior to this, he'd been sacrificing animals, just like kind of at the beginning. So I was thinking, oh, animal sacrifice, human sacrifice, ba-bam, like Lucifer wins. I don't know. Like, so, but apparently not though. Because Julie and Margaret, then they start like chasing Lucifer through the castle, and he ends up by the tree, like where the first incarnation of Lucifer got killed by Father Damon, like at the beginning of the movie. And then the archangels like try to get him to recite the Lord's Prayer, right? And he kind of seems like he wants to. So I think the implication, like I said, this wasn't super clear, but I thought the implication was that he was trying to fight Lucifer like within him, because Lucifer was inside his body, but he didn't necessarily want him in there, so he was trying to like fight him off. I don't really know. So he does like keep trying to say it, but he keeps like messing it up. And then he gets kind of like pissed off, and then he snaps Margaret's neck. So she gets killed. And then Julie, who is the last remaining archangel, she ends up like being the last one to kill him with the magical power of the special effects cross. Like he kind of like Lucifer's out at the end, like with the contact lenses and everything like that. It's crazy looking. Now after that, there's a shot of Margaret and Julie and Father Damon, and they're all like coalescing like into one thing. Like I guess like the three angels as one or something, because I think this was something that they were talking about earlier on in the movie, but I wasn't really sure like what the mythology behind it was, because I think they kind of talked about it, but it wasn't, I don't know, it seemed like a little convoluted, I thought. But you know what I mean? So they're all just kind of like, woo, we're all one thing now, and we're going back to heaven or whatever the hell. I don't really know. So yeah, you know, he went full Jesus. Yeah, High Dozer said a very weird movie. It was a very weird movie. I mean, it was very weird. So yeah, so I'm gonna say like for an early 80s flick, it was okay. I think it had like enough entertainment value and weirdness to it that it kind of kept me interested, even though it did kind of have long stretches where it was kind of boring, and I'm like, let's kind of get on with this, because I didn't like the high school stuff was a lot more entertaining than the religious, like the angel people, you know what I mean? Because that was kind of boring and very, I don't know, it was kind of like a slog to get through, because they're just always talking about it, and we're the archangel and we have to go fight we're like, yeah, okay, we get that. So you know what I mean, it's that just kind of went on too long, I thought. But yeah, so there was that whole situation. Some of the acting, gonna say, was not great. You know, like I said, the mythology, especially about the angels, like the archangels, was a little bit convoluted. I don't know if they necessarily needed three of them. You know, I don't even, you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. And, you know, some of the scenes kind of dragged on, like, way longer than they needed to. But, you know, if this kind of sounds interesting to you at all, because, like I said, it is kind of bizarre, you know? So if you're interested to see like just a very weird kind of unsettlingly homoerotic, maybe not intentionally, mashup of The Omen, maybe Grease, and maybe Carrie, like just because of the high school aspect and stuff like that, I mean, then you might want to give it a go. I will say that my favorite thing about it still was the soundtrack. And really that almost kind of like salvaged the whole movie for me. It's almost like worth it just like hearing all those great songs in there. But other than that, I don't know. It was strange and it entertained me, but I think it should have concentrated more on the high school stuff. And it's funny because Frank LaLoggia, the writer-director, he said later that when they were releasing the movie, like the production company or whatever, they marketed it more toward the high school angle, you know what I mean? Like they the poster, which I think I used on the thumbnail, is like a yearbook page, like that's burning and stuff like that. So they focused a lot more like on the high school angle, because he's like, oh well, the marketing department were like, oh well, we didn't want to lean too hard into the religious angle because they thought that it would, you know, turn people off, which maybe they were right about that. But I will say that I thought the high school stuff was a lot more entertaining than the religious stuff was. Like, you can still do a movie with Lucifer as a high school kid. I mean, that's a good premise. But I don't think they needed to spend as much time with the archangels. And maybe it would have been better if all of the archangels had been other high school students. Because, like, as it was, only one of them was. And then there were two more. Then, like, one of them was already dead. And then one of them was, like, an older lady. So I don't know. So I kind of feel like maybe they should have just set the whole thing in the high school, you know? I think that would have been like a lot more entertaining. It could have been like weird as like it was, because it was pretty weird. But I don't know. I think all of the stuff with like the older lady and the real serious like religious stuff, I think that was felt kind of out of place, like especially because the high school stuff was like tonally a lot more like Carrie, you know what I mean? So I don't know. So I think that's kind of why I liked it, I just didn't love it. Like, I probably wouldn't ever watch it again. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. But yeah, so like I said, I can't remember who it was that recommended it, but thank you for recommending it, because there was some pretty weird shit in here that, like, I just can't even explain it. I'm just, like, watching it going, what the fuck am I watching? And it's funny because I watched it on Shudder, and I always read, like, after I watch it, I always, like, read the little reviews, like, underneath that, and I think that was the first review. Somebody said, what the fuck did I just watch? I'm like, yeah, that's about how I felt about it too. But yeah, it's on Shudder. I'm sure it's on other streaming services too, if it sounds like, you know, if you're into 80s horror and it sounds like something that you'd be into. It's pretty entertaining, but there are kind of long stretches of boredom in there, so just know that going in. But you know what I mean? All right, so I guess I've been waffling on about this long enough, so I guess I'm gonna wrap this up. We're gonna do a movie review tomorrow evening, which will either be we did watch The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot, so we might do that, or I think Xanada sent us the Cocaine Cowboys documentary, like the original one, and I think it's supposed to come today. If it doesn't come today, then we won't be able to do that, but if it does come today, then we might watch that and talk about that tomorrow, but we'll see how it goes. And also, I'm planning on doing, we'll see if I have time, but I'm planning on doing like another book review and another movie review this week, maybe Tuesday, maybe one on Tuesday and one on Thursday. And I wanted to do Christmas ones. So I'm actually reading a Christmas horror book right now that I hopefully will get a review up. And I want to do, I might change my mind about this, but I'm going to do a Christmas horror movie that came out last year called Christmas Bloody Christmas, which is also on Shudder. So I might watch that and do a review of that sometime in the week as well, just because, you know, Christmas is coming up and I feel like I hadn't done, like I did Await Further Instructions, which is kind of a Christmas horror movie, but I felt like I needed to do some more Christmas horror, like leading up to the holiday. So, you know what I mean? Yeah, High Desert said Shudder added some Mario Bava movies. Yeah, I saw that today. Yeah, I just went on there today and I was just like, ooh, look at all this stuff they added. They have a shit ton of kind of lesser known Giallo movies on there too that they added a little while before. High Desert said, is it on Shudder? This movie is. Fear No Evil, yes, this is on Shudder, and also Christmas Bloody Christmas is on Shudder, yeah. So that's probably why I'm gonna end up doing that one. But yeah, so I guess I'm gonna wrap it up. So thanks everybody for dropping by and watching me talk about this weird ass movie today. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow night. Good night.